Welcome to the Practicing Accountant Podcast, your go-to resource for transforming your accounting practice. This podcast is for accountants ready to take control of their business and build their ideal practice by mastering the essentials, setting the right prices, defining a powerful niche, and selling with ease. We'll dive into strategies that boost profits, attract your ideal clients, elevate your services, and help you choose the most effective pricing models. We are champions for efficiency, value, and intentionality, and adversaries of people-pleasing, bad clients, and complacency. We provide actionable strategies to help you break the hamster wheel of typical accounting work. The mission of the Practicing Accountant Podcast is simple: to enhance your experience as an entrepreneurial accountant and help you turn neglected practices into a thriving business. So, if you're ready to level up your practice, this podcast is for you. Tune in and let's get to work.
It's new.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll go through the client bag of experiences coaching accountants for the week. So this is I've shared some client stories in the past, and I think it's kind of fun just to kind of see, without not saying anything confidential, but here's a mix of what happened this week in the world of a CPA coach. Had one client who got some upward feedback that was less than favorable and has to course correct. I've got a client who was called out in a meeting because a leader didn't have trust in them. That's not very exciting. I got one I'll come back to because that may be a topic for today. I've got one who's a CEO of a big firm who is trying to make some tough decisions about letting go of some folks. And speaking of which, Price Waterhouse let go of 1,500 people this week.
Yeah.
Doing some house cleaning. Here's a big one. I had a client who's leaving a big firm in the Southeast, and he had grabbed another partner at this firm. They were going to leave together, and they gave notice to their firm and said, "We're out. We're going to go start our thing and be wildly successful as independent accountants." And within a week, the guy that was going to leave with my client bailed. Oof. and went back to the firm and left my client, completely on his own, starting his own business, which,
wow,
not to say that he couldn't, but man, it just wasn't the plan. So that was a tough one. Another client who's trying to figure out marketing, and he'd prefer to get clients via the internet and SEO than networking. Got a client who just finished busy season, is just doing a start, stop, continue. Got a client who has taken his foot off the business development dial for the last 4 months and is now trying to re-ramp that up, which is hard, as we've talked about here.
Mm-hmm.
A client that's switching firms and trying to create boundaries in their life so that they don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Got a client that just decided to join a different firm and is leaving. One who is also doing a start, stop, continue on busy season. And another one who is trying to build their tech stack, which is no surprise. Independent accountants love tech stacks. And that's the life of a CPA coach so far through this point of the week.
Full week. Sounds like.
I got a full day tomorrow too, so we'll see what happens tomorrow. Actually, I can tell you what happens tomorrow. I can look right now and tell you that tomorrow will be talking about HR issues, talking about leaving the firm, talking about making the firm better, and trying to find a new CFO gig. So there you go.
There you go.
Now, the one I wanted to circle back on was a firm that has done very well, just 2 partners, and maybe a third that may come in, and they have done extremely well, except guess what? They had concentration risk. And what I mean by that is that most of their business was tied up into a single client.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as usually happens when you have that type of risk, if that single client decides to do something different, that firm is at risk. So this firm has work until like September, and then it dramatically changes.
Ooh.
and they're not firing. That this client isn't firing my client. They're just selling off a lot of the business that my client is working on.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be like without work, and or at least dramatically different in like September. And so they need to do something, or else in October they're going to have a hard time making payroll. And it usually starts with themselves too. They've already said it, like, well, I'm just not going to pay myself, which is admirable. But we're 4 or 5 months away from this, right? So if you knew that in 4 or 5 months you were going to run out of clients, and that, but at the same time you had a lot of work to do here and now to wrap things up, what would you do?
I've been in this position actually.
Yeah. What'd you do?
Went and did more of what's worked before. I went and met with more firms that were complementary to what we do, not competitive, and sold them on the idea of a referral relationship, and built new relationships like that.
And so it worked.
It worked. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you think that, but this firm isn't doing that. This firm is working day in and day night on the work that is urgent and important and needs to be done now. And they're getting paid, well for it. But, they've got like, 15 people working for them, and they're all busy and they're all focused on the here and now. Meanwhile, the clock ticks, minute by minute towards this moment here this summer when they're going to run out of work.
Yep.
And I share that story because it's not uncommon. Very often accountants, CPAs, they get so caught up in the here and now, the short-term billable hour or fee, that they're not paying attention to what's next or what's coming, that they likely even know about. Like, it's, in this case, they know it. In other cases, they may not know it. They may suspect it or just wonder about it. But for whatever reason, they just tend to focus on the short term, here and now, quick fix, urgent and important work, and ignore the stuff that doesn't necessarily have the same urgency, but has a lot more importance.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings is dig the well before you're thirsty. And they're going to be super thirsty here in a little bit, and they don't have a well to pull from.
Right.
And that's an issue. And they should start, you always talk about the business development dial. That's probably at a 0 or a 1 right now because they still have billable hours. So they're making money, but they're not thinking ahead and filling that pipeline up. And that's super important. And that pipeline should always be filling up, whether you're at capacity or not. We've talked about that because that builds, my favorite word, pricing power, and gives you options. And having options in business is probably the best thing that you can build for yourself.
Sure. Well, just having the certainty that you have the options, that, there's a plan A and a B and a C and a D and as many plans as I decide that I need so that I can feel comfortable that the business will thrive. The crazy thing is, maybe not crazy, maybe typical or expected. They just paid themselves bonuses for last year. And those bonuses were like 3 or 4 times salary.
Oh, shit.
And, they're material. And this is not something they disclosed to me directly. It was something I just saw in the financial information they provided to me. And it just, kind of struck me as odd, like knowing what's coming, in that year. Do you just go ahead and pay yourself anyway? Or do you say, you know what, I need to reinvest in the business right now. We're going to need some of this dry powder to pay ourselves and pay our people when that time comes. And maybe I'll circle back in 6 months to see how I'm doing and pay myself what I expect to be paid. But that one struck me as odd too. But again, it's we used to call it the Sinister Six, right? Those 6 traits of an accountant that I tend to find over and over again where they need development, and planning and knowing being 2 of those. Planning for the future, planning for the events of the summer and fall, being aware of when that work runs out, and planning to go get some more, and knowing your numbers enough to say that I'm not going to pay myself this because this is going to be a hard year, and I need to make sure that money's here in the business to support what we're trying to do.
Yep. Nothing.
And otherwise, you draw it out now, and then what? You're going to wait until later this year, and then you're going to have to, make an equity call.
Yep. Leave it to accounting firms to run their firm like an accounting firm, not a business.
All right. Right. And the other thing is, like, accountants just are so damn hypocritical anyway. Like, they go around to tell their clients, you got to do this, you got to do this. And I can't believe you're not doing that. And we'll do that for you, and you can pay us for it. And here's another service that we provide that you can do, and you definitely need it. Meanwhile, every single one of those services they need themselves and just aren't providing themselves.
Right. Yep. Always.
I have seen actually in some firms, they'd like hire their own people to do certain things. Like if you've got someone really good at strategy or facilitating a retreat or planning a 3 to 5 year vision, like they don't necessarily hire them, but they allocate their time to the firm rather than to the clients.
Yeah.
And, if you've got resources like that, that's great. If you don't, then that doesn't count for you. But
yeah, I've been a part of a very traditional CPA firm run by a boomer generation guy who happened to be my dad also. And it was the cobbler shoes parable to a T. We'd give all this advice to clients, help keep their books clean. But meanwhile, our books were a mess. We needed, our cash flow issues were out of control because of the people pleaser, because taking on any work, and it created this mess of a business that I think is pretty standard across the industry.
It's common. Yeah. Where you just look and see what the firm has done, and just scratch your head and just don't understand how they can give advice to anyone else when their own stuff is the way it is. But at the same time, I don't need to be hypocritical, but I mean, sometimes I'm coaching someone on something and I'll say something that comes out of my mouth, and there's a little voice in the back of my head said, "That's pretty good advice. Maybe you should take it yourself." And I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I should do that myself. Like maybe this is somehow coming back to me. But I think my point is, and our point is always this time of year, is it's a great time to reflect on how the firm is doing. There isn't as much urgent work right now, but there is a lot of important work right now. There should be performance evaluations going on. There should be retreats being had, strategy being updated, goals being made, projections being updated. And a lot of the work that I think accountants are lazy about is extension work that goes into September and October. And, they take their foot off the gas, and they, take most of May to be hungover. They take most of June to be with families and on vacations. First half of July is the same thing. And then somewhere towards the end of July, they wake up and realize they have a shit ton of work to do before the second and third busy seasons. And then it turns into another busy season. It doesn't have to. Like, they should be doing some of that extension work now. They should be telling clients, like, hey, get your shit in here and let's get it done. Let's wrap this up so we're not doing it with a bunch of other crap come September and October. But that's, again, not necessarily the case that happens in reality. But I think that's the opportunity. Is like, there's not a lot of short term right now, because we're past the season. It's time to focus on long term. It's time to focus on where do we project that we need to get new clients and be developing business now, and possibly changing pricing models and landing on niches and redesigning our offer and really making a change in the business so that it's better next year and not just the hamster wheel.
You said something, redesigning the offer. I don't think accounting firms have an offer. They put up their services, what they do, and then they serve 45 different industries, and they do all the services for all those industries, and they're experts at all of them. What is that? The generalist expert, or the what was that term we came across?
I can't remember.
Yeah, now's the time to.
Well, here's a standard offer. What do you guys offer? Well, we do tax prep and filing, and we do bookkeeping, and we have a fractional CFO service, and we do some advisory. And to the accountant, it sounds great, right? That's like, those are the things we do. We've got a long menu of all these things we get to do, but it's also, none of those things are very exciting for a prospect to hear. Like, that's what they looked up on the website. That's what they assumed you did. And it's just a mistake that, it doesn't sell. That offer doesn't sell.
Right.
But, what they should be considering is what are the outcomes of the work that they provide? What are the outcomes of bookkeeping? Well, you get a good quality set of books. What does that do? Well, It makes tax preparation a ton easier. It gives you information quicker that you can make decisions from. It allows you to analyze where you've been so that you can predict better where you're going, make the changes you need to make. Like that's a much better offer than bookkeeping and tax prep. We take the headache out of doing it. We make sure it's right, so you don't have to worry about getting audited. And we also do some planning so we can help you budget for next year and make good decisions between now and the end of the year so that you're in a better position next year and you'll save some money and that kind of stuff. And the CFO, like, what are the outcomes of that? Well, you get better decision making, maybe better access to capital, better analysis of margins and better ways to save money, earn money on your money. What's the ROI? What's the outcome? But to your point on, bringing this up and pointing at it, like, accountants don't give great offers.
Yeah. A good exercise. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say a good exercise for that is try to write down what you do for clients without once mentioning the service that you're providing them. So don't say that you're an EA. Don't say that you provide a tax return. Don't say that you, do categorization and reconciliations. Don't say any task that you do. Tell people what you do without those things. And
I have a client that last month they had me take a look at their website, and my feedback for him was, okay, this is great. It's a great list. It's a lot of great things that you do, but nowhere in here does it describe the value of this or the outcome of this.
Yep.
And they reworked their website, and you couldn't tell it. I mean, you can absolutely tell a difference now between what it was and what it was now, or is now, because they reworded everything. And to your point, valid point, like they talk less about the thing that they create or the service they provide or how they spend the time doing what the client has asked them to do. And now it highlights what they get
right
for investing in their services.
Yep.
And, I'm not going to sit here and say like sales doubled or anything like that, but it's just, it makes a much better conversation and offer when you're talking about outcomes rather than the process. Like you buy a car, you don't hear about how they made it and how we have robots to do all this shit. And this is how we bolt this on and how we do this. You hear about, it's just going to get your family safely from where you're wanting to go to where you go. And we've got these great safety records that allow you to feel safe and comfortable. And it goes this fast and you hit this button, you don't have to drive anymore. Like, the outcomes, the fun stuff.
Yep. So if you're a firm that does have concentration risk right now, or you're struggling to get clients, work on that offer, figure out what outcome you provide to clients, and that will help you in the business development realm, no matter how you do it, whether you do it with paid ads or you do it with networking. Having some sort of way to tell people how you change their lives is a lot better than telling them what you do day to day.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think you summed it up nicely. I don't have anything else to say after that.
Sweet.
Yeah. So
awesome,
thanks for watching the Practicing Accountant podcast, and we hope you tune in for future episodes, and please share and like this episode, and also continue to stay tuned. We will have some announcements here over the next podcast or two about some exciting things we've been working on behind the scenes that we will offer and make available. And otherwise, we appreciate you very much for watching.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
Cheers.